The pandemic era is officially behind us. Live crowds are back in full force, and SummerSlam is directly in our sights. We'll take a look at how WWE's biggest party of the summer is shaping up so far. We'll also look back at some of the major milestones of the pandemic era and what impact that has, good or bad, on the wrestling business. And not to be outdone, AEW's got a couple tricks up their sleeve as well. We're going to cover all that and more with our very special guest on today's edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. The bomb drops now. Hello and welcome to your Thursday edition of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast here on Sportinarium Radio. I am your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher. Thank you for listening on Sportinarium Radio. Make sure you give Sportinarium Radio a follow on all the social media sites at Sportinarium WW on Twitter and at Sportinarium on Instagram. The website, sportinariumradio.com. If you are listening to us on demand on one of our platforms, thank you for doing that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you get a notification every time a new episode drops. Once again, I'm your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher, and joining me is my tag team partner, my brother from another mother, the whole podcasting show. The gun show is out today, brother. Mr. Jared Justice is in the house. What's the haps, man?
How's it going, my friend?
Well, you know, I'm living the dream, brother. Don't wake me up.
Man, talk about living the dream. Before this show, before we started this thing, I kind of was like, okay, it's gonna be an okay show. We're gonna do good, we got a special guest, all that good stuff. And then talk about some bombs dropping, man.
Oh my gosh.
Some bombs exploding.
There is huge news in the wrestling world as of a couple hours ago, and we are going to cover it. But to help us do that, the third man on tonight's program, welcome back, Mr. Bo Tayvian himself. What is up, man? How's it going?
What's going on, guys?
Man, it is a blast catching up with you. Thanks for coming on and covering some different stuff, man. Last time you were on, we went in depth on an interview with you. If you guys are listening and you haven't checked that podcast out, make sure you go back and do that in our archives on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. We had a great time with Bo, but this time, Bo, we're going to get your perspective on today's current product, not just about you, but about the outside wrestling world, and hope that works for you.
I think Jared missed it. I was waiting for him to say the bomb exploded and bad things, and then he was introducing me. I was waiting for it as I was in the lobby. I'm like, all right, he's going to cut me right away.
Oh, that's
I was funny. Like, the show's not all about Bo. He's leaving.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm good. I'm happy to not talk about myself.
Well, that's great. Before we get into it, guys, again, want to remind you, we are at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I completely forgot to throw up our fancy little ticker at the bottom for everybody watching on YouTube. So make sure you follow along there. Again, follow us on social media. Hit that subscribe button. We are running a free t-shirt giveaway throughout the month of July. Those instructions on how to enter that giveaway are in the ticker, so make sure you follow that. I'll go in depth on that later in the show. But let's get into it, fellas. We always like to start beyond the federation. And man, Jared, you alluded to it a minute ago. Bombs are dropping beyond the federation. Of course, I'm talking about AEW. One of the big things that came out today, and it's huge news around the wrestling world, is CM Punk. The rumor mill is heating up once again. Basically, is that CM Punk, they're saying, the rumor and innuendo, those dirt sheet writers or whatever, are saying that he is training for an in-ring return. And it's almost definite that he's going to AEW. Jared, that is huge. Huge, like you said, especially because guess what? Next pay-per-view is All Out, and it's in Chicago, and we know who's from Chicago. Man, that's huge.
Yeah. You talk about Chicago, you instantly think about CM Punk. You think about that Money in the Bank whenever he was against John Cena and
beat
him. And so if they can bring CM Punk, imagine the response that they will get. It'll be ridiculous.
Yep. It 100% will. Bo, what's your thoughts on CM Punk? I know I didn't totally bring you in the loop on that little piece of rumor, but what's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, man, that's you guys caught me off guard. I didn't actually. I was on some dirt sheets or reading a little bit.
Yeah.
So the two rumors I've seen prior to Andrade was CM Punk and Strowman.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, prior to Aleister Black, Malachi, whatever. So CM Punk has been a heavy fan favorite to be a surprise.
Yeah.
But being Chicago, a live crowd, sure, why not?
I mean, Bo, to me, it makes logical sense that I've said it. Jared and I actually said this before we hit record, is that I think there is zero chance Punk goes back to WWE. I think it's zero. That's just my opinion. Send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24. I don't care. Do you think AEW is the logical place?
We talked about that on my interview podcast, where we're basically seeing Punk, no matter where he is unhappy. So
it's true.
For him to come back, the money has to be good, and I think they would have to basically allow him to do whatever creatively that he wants to do.
Jared, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think he's basically a lock for AEW, or do you think creatively he would be given the freedom and the money in WWE?
I mean, I guess as long as it gets those daggone ice cream bars, he'll be happy. I mean, some of that stuff that he requested was nonsense last time, but whatever, if it makes him happy, like Bo said, you have some little whiny bitches. He's one of them, in my opinion. I mean, I love the guy. I mean, I don't know him, but I mean, just his career. I liked the pipe bomb promo. I liked it that he kind of just spoke his mind. And whenever they pissed him off, he left.
Sure.
So I don't think he's a lock for AEW. I think it's highly likely he could do New Japan, but New Japan's kind of got the stuff going on with AEW. So, I mean, I think it's guaranteed he shows up on an AEW show if he comes back. But I don't know that it's guaranteed he would be AEW full-time.
This is just go ahead, Bo. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I lean that way as well. A one-off or a Brock Lesnar type where he comes back when he wants to come back, and he always gets a reception or a pop. But.
See, I'm of the mindset that I just feel like, and again, like Jared said, we don't know the guy. I don't really know his personality. All we know is what we've heard and what he said and what we've read. Shout out to Coke Zero there. We'd love to have you as a sponsor. That's right.
Well, no, it's playing off the CM Punk.
Oh, instead, I got you. Okay, I see where you're going. My bad. I see where you're going. No, what I was saying was, I've lost my train of thought now, Bo. Thank you.
I'm doing comedy now, man.
I know. I mean, you're hitting us now. We'll let you plug that.
People to show up. I mean, I can be talked into it.
So I'm a bigger draw in comedy than I am as a worker.
Wow. Look at this guy. No, what I was going to say was I feel like I don't know CM Punk, don't know his situation, don't know all of his demands, yada, yada, yada. But I almost feel like that his relationship with WWE, not counting all the Fox stuff, with WWE, it would almost be like WWE would cave to CM Punk if they brought him back. That's just me.
The other side of that, to play devil's advocate, is it was a work because they didn't cut him off.
Right. And that's true. I don't believe the pipe bomb was a shoot at all. I think it was absolutely planned to a certain extent.
Right.
But
and we've seen Vince time and time again allow under proper, if it's to make money, he's going to bring anybody back.
That's very true. But why would
there is no why? It's just it's going to happen or it's not.
I guess so. Okay. So moving on to another piece of AEW news is bodyslam.net is reporting. Again, there's a lot of rumor and innuendo going on about Bryan Danielson. Daniel Bryan.
I forgot to mention him as the other one. Yeah, that's circulating as well.
A lot of people are talking about Daniel Bryan. Bodyslam.net is saying today that Bryan has inked a deal with AEW, that it's a lock. That's what they say. That's the only site that I've seen that's reported that so far as of recording time. That could change, so our news could be old news by the time you listen to this. But
I
Again,
haven't seen it on SC Scoops, and they're the ones that I've followed for years because usually if it's on SC Scoops, it's biblical.
Sure.
You guys read it more than me, so you would have to tell me how accurate some of these are and how often they hit.
I'm not going to say that bodyslam.net is inaccurate or accurate. It's not one that I follow religiously. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to take this. I don't know about you guys. I'm going to take this with a grain of salt for now. I do expect him to show up in AEW. I think more likely now than if you would have asked me, 2 months ago. But I don't know if this is a lock or not. It's all rumor and innuendo.
I mean, I'm on here as the worker wrestler perspective. To a degree, I catch some of that and sometimes don't. But I also, it's one of those things that, say you, Chris, or you, Jared, you're negotiating something. As my colleague, it's your business, not mine. Sure. So I kind of, as a fanboy, even while a worker, it's like, oh, this would be cool if this XYZ. But I also more and more, I'm just, I'll see it when I see it. And in fact, you guys sound like you read way more dirt sheets than I do. Some people didn't even know that Tommy End was even there.
Right.
So that's kind of neat. And even JR, his stance nowadays is he doesn't want to know the finish. He'd rather just call it.
Right.
So in play, you got Strowman, you got Daniels, CM Punk, and it was Aleister Black as well. So
right. Yeah, those are the big names. Go ahead, Jared.
The only reason why that I listen to podcasts, a couple that Conrad does, and I will listen to some Wade Keller. He's extremely annoying. I hate the way he says PW Torch. PW Torch, PW Torch. I just want to reach through there and strangle him. But that's beside the point. But Chris has been trying to convince me to go to SummerSlam, and then we're planning on going to WrestleMania next year. That's the only reason really why that I've even looked at the dirt sheets. And then, of course, Chris has told me some of what's going on. Right. But I'm with you as far as, I didn't know Aleister Black was going to be there. I read about it after the fact, and I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. I have to go back and watch that. And that's how I would prefer it. But apparently this stuff is running rampant.
Well, and I will say this. I've said this on the podcast before. I am not a religious dirt sheet reader. I'm not. I don't live for the rumors. I don't live for those kind of things. Like Jared, when it comes to a big event or something, maybe I'm a little more interested in it. But at the same time, I want to be just as surprised as everybody else. I had no idea that Tommy End was showing up last week. Malachi Black, whatever you want to call him. I had no idea. Now, later on, if I was scrolling through news, I did see an article that said he's in the building or whatever. Again, could have been posted afterwards and doctored up. I don't know. But I don't know.
So, was it Cody Rhodes? Somebody's explaining how they didn't know he was there, right? And at the Night Center, which is where it was, there are so many crevices and caveats. I've been there a few times for bodybuilding shows. So, the inner workings for any sort of entertainment, if you're a performer, there's so many back halls and different, you can get lost. It's very weird structure. So, to that level, I could see how he stayed hidden, except for who except for Cody.
Except for who needed to know knew.
Right. And then, some of our CCW guys were there as well. And I think everybody was just kind of
it was the same thing when they debuted Sting. They kept him hidden. Nobody knew he was there until he showed up. So AEW does a really good job of hiding their guys. And to an extent, I think WWE does too, when they're bringing in, somebody pretty big as well. But yeah, so all of this that we're talking about is rumor and innuendo. It might happen, it might not happen. Who knows? What is booked to happen and confirmed on tonight's edition of AEW Fyter Fest Part 2, I guess, is next week. It has been announced that Chris Jericho, in a no disqualification match next week, will go one-on-one against Nick Gage. Jeez. Holy cow. That one, to me, that's totally out of left field. Bo, you're giving a fun little smirk there. What do you think?
I don't know. It is news to me, but
yes.
For some reason, I'm not something. I don't remember what I saw, what I read, or where I was. I think they set up a seed, or was there a social media interaction that called somebody out?
I don't know. That's possible. I may have missed it myself.
That's why I'm not surprised, because something somewhere is like I think Jericho.
I'm sure it's very possible.
Guess what? There's going to be light bulbs and blood. Yay!
That's what I was going to ask you, Bo. Is as a wrestler, I've never seen that you've done any kind of hardcore stuff, so I assume you don't. What's your opinion on somebody who they built their whole career? I mean, we're not talking about the drugs or anything like that. That kind of goes along a lot of times with that hardcore style. But what's your opinion on somebody who basically builds their career around just beating the crap out of everybody, as opposed to someone like you who is a wrestler and actually, respects the craft more and does more, of the wrestling moves?
So, I mean, that's easier for me to answer this year versus previously, only because Alex Ocean, he is our house deathmatch guy at Coastal Championship Wrestling. He's been all over the Northeast. I watched the David Arquette documentary, which had his incident with Nick Gage,
right?
To where shrapnel. They painted Gage out to be a bad guy to sell more tickets for whatever, but it was literally shrapnel that flew up in the air from. And so, I think, especially me being more injury prone in my older age, I don't think I would do a lot of this stuff, only because for what price? Other guys thrive on it. It's how they feel alive. A lot of guys in that world, unfortunately, face a lot of inner demons. Legit, like I'm not trying to, because I mean, all of us have some sort of sadness or depressive type thing, but there's something about bodily harm and to that extent that you're looking to feel something and come alive. And so it's a very twisted individual in a lot of ways to be able to take that type of punishment.
Yep.
So on one level, I absolutely respect what they do, just to take that type of physical punishment and then to do it night after night. Like Alex will go to a Friday show, go to a Saturday show, show up to our tapings on Sunday, bloody and cut open, and he'll still work a regular wrestling match with us.
Right.
So while I can poke fun at him because he's a buddy, I make light of it. Not what they do with different weapons. They also try to tell a story. For me personally, I can't get into it that much.
Yep.
It's just not something that intrigues me. If it's to that level, I think I'd just rather watch a movie.
Sure.
But there is a craft to it. From being around Ocean, there's certain spots and certain setups. Like you set up the story to kind of calm them and then get the holy chant to it. So there's a craft to it. I'm just not. It's not a personal. It's kind of like if you're a Ford or a Dodge. The other thing is there, but you just don't care.
Right. Well, and I think you brought up a really interesting point, Bo, talking about the inner demons and the bodily harm and those kind of things. I think if you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Nick Gage,
that's the one that I skipped. I've seen all the others, so that tells you where I stand.
Exactly. Well, it's funny that you mentioned it because I was going to say that Dark Side of the Ring episode really paints that picture that you just laid out perfectly. It really paints that picture so you really understand Gage, because I'm like you. I'd rather watch a movie than watch guys beat each other with light tubes. But if that's what they're going for and that's their moneymaker and that's what their adrenaline is fueled by and that kind of thing, then by all means go for it. I mean, perfect example, this coming weekend at GCW Homecoming, Nick Gage is defending his GCW championship against Matt Cardona, formerly known as Zack Ryder, in a death match.
That's what I saw. Okay. Now I'm putting it together. That's what I did see. Was that. Okay.
So Cardona and Gage this weekend. Jared, you and I talked about it when it was announced, which I think was about a month ago. We talked about that specific match. So that is this coming weekend. Cardona, again, not a death match guy, but stepping into that world. Jared, I want to get your thoughts. Jericho, obviously not a deathmatch guy, but he's stepping into a no DQ match. We saw AEW. I'll be careful. No, I won't be careful how I say this. I'll use my air quotes. Took it to the limit with Moxley and Omega at the Revolution pay-per-view. How far, if you had to guess, do you think they take this? How far is Jericho willing to go with this Nick Gage match?
I mean, I think you'll probably get some thumbtacks. I think that you might get like some sort of very controlled glass spot. Probably not like, light tubes and all that crap.
Right.
But I mean, I can tell you firsthand, man. I mean, me and you, Chris, back whenever that we used to beat the crap out of each other, like on the trampoline and stuff, and act like we were wrestlers. I could see. I mean, there was a time I was going to let you slam me on tacks. I can see some of this stuff kind of being, during the match, it's pretty cool. But I've had glass dug out of me on several different occasions, and it was not from anything to do with wrestling. And that sucks.
Right.
So I can only imagine what these guys go through afterwards. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. But to answer your question, I think it will be very controlled. I hope to God there's not, there's going to be a huge explosion, and then it's like, like a fart in church.
Right.
So I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy.
So also, Jericho's fall from that cage. Supposedly that elbow injury was extremely actually real.
Legit. Yeah. Legit.
So I'm kind of, now that we tied the Cardona thing together, I'm kind of, who's sanctioning? Is it AEW?
AEW, yeah, next week on AEW, because it's part of Jericho's. He's doing the gimmick. I don't remember what they're calling it, but it's the gimmick that Cody and MJF did right at the beginning of AEW, where Cody wanted to face MJF, but he had to go through all these stages to get there.
Like a gauntlet or
exactly.
Sure.
So this is Jericho's second stage next week.
All right, so just knowing that Jericho's still slightly injured from the elbow, there's going to be interference or something. It's not going to be what we're expecting.
No, I don't think. I think there's a difference, and AEW, I'm sure, will clearly define it, between no DQ match and death match.
Right.
There is definitely a difference, and they won't let it get that far, especially because Jericho's got like probably 4 more matches before MJF. They don't want him to get seriously hurt. He's on a big worldwide Fozzy tour, all those things.
It's going to be on TV too, not pay-per-view, correct?
Yeah, it's TV next week. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
who is Kingston currently tied to right now?
Moxley? No, Pentagon, Penta El Cerro.
Okay.
They were feuding with the Bucks up until.
Okay, so those are separate tracks, so it won't be that.
Right.
Probably.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, they could get involved. Obviously, I would obviously expect Moxley and Nick Gage to somehow get into a kerfuffle or whatever. But
a what?
A kerfuffle.
He loves that word.
A skirmish, if you will.
It's a kerfuffle.
A skirmish.
That sounds like a bad queef.
Maybe it is. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, if you are still joining us and you haven't turned the show off yet, this is the Powerbomb Wrestling Podcast. I am here with 2 hoodlums. My name is Chris Belcher. They have taken me captive. I've got Jared Justice and Bo Tayvian. I'm trying to steer this ship, ladies and gentlemen, but it is not working.
This man said kerfuffle.
You said queen.
Hey, your shirt says huh? I'm going to say what your shirt says. Huh?
Exactly. Listen, if you're still hanging out with us, thank you for doing that. Make sure you follow us on social media for so many more shenanigans. There's another word, shenanigans.
No, I use that a lot. So that's
okay, good. At PBW Podcast on Facebook,
Chris,
Twitter,
they're so
and
baffled
Instagram.
they have to stay tuned.
That's true. That's it.
Good luck.
You do not know what is coming next on the Powerbomb Wrestling Podcast. Oh, good grief.
I wasn't frozen.
I wish you
thought
would.
you were for a second.
That's hilarious. So at PBW Podcast, everywhere that you find your podcast. Sportinarium Radio, thank you so much for tuning in over there. Thanks to Tom and Dave and that team for having us on. Ladies and gentlemen, AEW is going on as we're recording, so I might try to drop a couple things. We're going to move on from AEW, but before we do, ladies and gentlemen, the Dr. Britt Baker has retained her AEW Women's Championship over Nyla Rose. Jared, no comments. All right, let's move on to WWE. He knows what I'm talking about. WWE.
Is he opposed to Nyla Rose?
Bo, do not ask that question. You're not allowed. Jared, you're not.
I got in trouble one time because I yelled something.
Okay. Bo, listen, Bo, we will talk about this offline. All right. This is not PG.
I got in trouble by him and not by anybody official.
Okay. So
wait. This is a PG show, so I can't cuss off of kerfuffle.
I can say kerfuffle, but that is the line. You cannot cross the
stay
kerfuffle
at
line.
Kerfuffle.
Yes. All right.
Nyla Rose is a kerfuffle. I don't even know what a kerfuffle is, but there we go.
Earmuffs, Chris.
Kerfuffles.
Earmuffs for all of our listeners.
No, because kerfuffle is undefined. We have no idea.
No.
Anyway,
what does it identify as?
Okay, we're done. I have the oh god, I have the ability to mute your mic, and that's what I'm gonna do. Ready? Mute. Bo is muted. So WWE, WWE Money in the Bank is in the books. What an incredible show it was. Jared, you hopped on to the recap with us this past Sunday where we talked about it. I know you've gone back and watched it again. I have as well. Monday Night Raw was huge as well. John Cena making his return. No John Cena sucks chance to be found. He is back. Jared, it's one of those things that you didn't know you missed until he was gone, and now he's back.
Man, I knew I missed him. It's just one of those things. It's like Triple H during his reign of terror. These guys are so good, but it's like Vince. We gotta get more. And he just wants to shove it down everybody's throats. Bo, leave that where it's at. But it's like, literally, he wants to cram. He gets stuck on a superstar, wants to cram it down everybody's throat, and then people get sick of it and chant that individual sucks. But they're good. Triple H was always good. Cena was always good. Roman was always good. Yep. But it was very interesting that for the first time you hear Cena's music hit, and there's no like John Cena sucks. John Cena sucks. Just the roof blew off. So that was interesting.
And Bo, supposedly he is back full time between now and SummerSlam. If you, again, Rumor and Innuendo Online says that he is advertised for every Raw, SmackDown, and house show between now and SummerSlam.
How many months is that?
That is exactly 4 weeks from today.
Go on a heck of a run.
There's a paycheck. Thanks.
1, 2, hang on. I'm counting. 1, 2, 3, 5 weeks from today. Okay. But all that to say, though, yes, that doesn't seem like a lot. But for a guy that's not been full-time active in probably 4 years and to be advertised for every single show, I got to give the guy credit.
So I love when fans hate somebody because they're down our throats, like Jared said. Like you ride the pony until it's dead,
Sure.
And John Cena is good at what he does. He gets a fan reaction, and that's all you need as a wrestler, whether it's good or bad. As long as they always react, fantastic. So 5 weeks and making every single appearance, that's just a smart business move to have one of your polarizing superstars make sure that when the crowd is back, people show up, and that's all that is.
Right.
By the way, kerfuffle is a word. And it's basically conflicting views. So Nyla Rose is perfect.
I told you. Listen, I'm smarter than I look, okay?
No,
give me some credit.
I've never judged you on your looks, but I've sat around you enough to know that you're pretty smart. So we'll ride with that.
Kerfuffle, all right?
Oh, your shirt is retarded.
Use
Jared, we have a new target.
Anyway,
who sure is that?
Bruce Pritchard, something to wrestle with.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh? Anyway, that's another offline discussion. Kerfuffle, use that in your everyday life. So John Cena returns. We also get the return of Keith Lee, which is huge. Get the return.
Was that on Raw?
This is all from Raw on Monday night.
I missed it. Crap.
You get the return. I know. You get the return of Keith Lee. You get the return of Goldberg confronting Bobby Lashley, seemingly the WWE Championship for SummerSlam. Jared, what are your thoughts on Goldberg and Keith Lee? I know, we joke around about Goldberg and we might only see him for 5 minutes at SummerSlam or whatever. But I think Bro brought up a great point about John Cena. The fans are back. You got to put butts in the seats. Bring back Goldberg.
Yeah, I want to touch on Karrion Kross here in a second.
Yes, I'm getting there. There. Don't go there yet.
Okay. Goldberg, man, I mean, it's kind of like what Bo was saying. Ride a horse till it's dead, kind of. I mean, Goldberg's probably getting close, but
sure
he's not there yet. And, I mean, he still looks the part. He still does an awesome entrance. He does put butts in seats. His match is always most likely going to suck unless it's like 30 seconds. But, I mean, it's what it is.
I don't know where I thought he was going, but that was what I expected.
Bo, it's safe to say that you missed us. All right. You missed us. There is a huge Chris and Jared size hole
going here?
in your life, and we have now filled it.
Man, I do a lot of things on purpose. Chris knows that.
I'm with you. I was just like, wait a second, where's he going? Okay.
It's very true. Bo, thoughts on Keith Lee and Goldberg?
Well, so Goldberg, I thought he literally, it's odd to see him back because his last role was to hand the torch.
True. Yep.
So that's, I'm a little confused by the return. Where's SummerSlam at?
Vegas.
Usually if heading into Atlanta, they like to use him a lot.
Yep. But SummerSlam for the first time since 1992, Wembley Stadium, is going to be in a stadium in Las Vegas. So you got to put butts in the seats.
Yeah, it's I think it's all, and this is me not knowing anything personal inside, whatever, from the outside. We're at a strange segue with the roster, and we're probably, if I was WWE, trying to mesh old fans, new fans, and kind of make sure everybody on the return is covered.
Yep.
And that's what I see that move as.
For sure.
And then Keith Lee, do you wear a skirt again?
No, he wore the gear that he wore in NXT, but he wore a singlet on top.
Okay, because when they, I don't know what they did to his wardrobe.
He wore the Samoa Joe type shorts his first time out.
Yeah, like and even he on Twitter he apologized for it and said he'd be addressing all of it quickly. I don't think it was his decision, honestly, which is strange.
Dress while I wore a skirt.
It was like a long skirt on his debut on the up roster. But for the most part, most of us are in charge of our own outfit. Like obviously New Day, they can do their Mortal Kombat bit and things like that. Outside of trademarks, I think Vince has liberated it a little bit because New Day, they have a lot of messages on their ring attire. So
they do.
I'm gonna, if Peacock would ever volunteer its episodes, I could actually watch it. I don't know.
Yeah, probably not going to happen. Those TV rights.
So did something happen during Money in the Bank? Because I saw a lot of people say F Peacock.
So there was some streaming issues. Peacock had some streaming issues. It wasn't WWE. It was Peacock. So it was during. Basically, we missed all of the entrances for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match.
Okay, so that Chris's family knows because they're the only ones watching this. I actually fell asleep.
Shout out to my dad who's watching. Hi, Dad.
Hello, Mr. Belcher. But I fell asleep, so I had to run it back on Peacock. It's been a long couple of weeks for me. So
this is very interesting. Before we move on to Karrion Kross,
your dad is intrigued.
Jared, you mentioned it. I'm gonna, we want to definitely dive into it, but before we do, some more breaking news in AEW that is going on right now on Fyter Fest. Andrade has come out to cut a promo, and we saw his first couple weeks. Vicky Guerrero was by his side. Well, now he has a new manager. It's Vicky's nephew, Chavo Guerrero Jr.
I hate Chavo.
Okay, I'm excited.
I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
What's your beef, Jared?
Oh, and here comes the Death Triangle. Finally, that's who Andrade called out. Listen, put them all together, please.
I'm happy to see. No, wait,
Chavo
all together.
reminds me of
Not
that
yet.
Not yet. I agree because Pentagon.
I want Jared to tell me about Chavo.
Pentagon and those guys with Andrade.
That you have that's just very annoying. They just they're always around. They never do anything of any importance except for annoy you with their presence. And that's how I've always felt about Chavo. It's like, oh, here comes Eddie and Chavo. Well, I care about Eddie, but I don't care about Chavo. But yeah, here he is. There he is. Let's all celebrate Chavo. I just don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, so Chavo to me as a worker wrestler plays an important role. He's legitimate enough to give you a good fight and still job, and then every once in a while you have to make him look good so that your better guys, when they beat him, they look better too. So that's where I like him better than Vicky by a lot.
Oh, me too, for sure, hands down.
Vicky, she's just so fun to hate, though.
Yeah, and that's her role, and I get that. But Chavo for me has always, maybe just from a worker perspective, I always just appreciate what he does out there. So we got Andrade and Chavo versus the Triangle.
That's what it's looking like right now. So we'll see what happens. All right, Karrion Kross. Jared, you mentioned it. He also made his debut on Monday Night Raw this past week. Without Scarlett, without the exact entrance that he had in NXT, and he lost in about 2 minutes to Jeff Hardy.
So, first of all, Scarlett.
Yes, Bo, I did not hesitate. You are welcome to say, I did not hesitate. That's what happened.
So I only saw a snippet, but I'm going to let Jared go on his thing.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, Scarlett, not only is she like one of the best looking women on the planet, but like she has this gimmick that works for her that goes right along with him. And Vince has this terrible habit. Bo maybe can correct me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just looking at it as a fan. But he has this terrible habit of, well, this worked in NXT. We've got to make him WWE. And so then he takes away some of like the best things that these wrestlers have going for them. And yes, I said wrestlers, not sports entertainers. And it just kills me. And then you bring Karrion Kross on there, who is basically the blueprint for what Vince likes. And I know he's not a jobber, nothing wrong with jobbers. We need jobbers, blah, 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 blah. But you job him out the first night. And yeah, wins and losses may not always matter, but never get a second first impression. He needed Scarlett. He did not need to lose. Put him in there with somebody else if you don't want him to beat Jeff Hardy.
Okay. Bo, before you add to that, I want to add just a bit of context. From what I have read, apparently Scarlett is training to do in-ring work on her own. So I don't know if she's going to be, if they're going to add her to Karrion Kross later, or what, but I did read that at some point, but that was a while back. The other thing that I want to add is I'm okay with Karrion Kross losing if it had something to do with his NXT storyline, if it was to further his story, because he is your NXT champion. He is the face of that brand. Everyone on that brand has worked their tails off to make him look indestructible. And Jeff Hardy just beat him in 2 minutes.
How did he win?
Roll up.
What was before it?
Karrion Kross went up to do the 10 punches. Hardy kind of power bombed him and put his feet on the ropes and beat him. That's legit it. That's what
kind of power bombed him.
So Cross
like Undertaker used to do, kind of like the last ride.
But so Cross was up doing the 10
right
punches,
okay,
and Hardy just dropped him.
I hate that even more now.
Yep. So it was about a 3-minute match. Cross got in his stuff. Jeff Hardy hit a twist of fate. He missed a swanton. Then he ended up rolling Cross up. So
there's so many things.
There's a lot of things. Yep.
A lot of so they did the same thing with Djokovic and all of those guys. They renamed them after building them.
Yep.
It seems that whatever Triple H and Shawn build up at NXT, it's not good enough for Vince, even though the whole reason you want to push them to the main is because they got over at NXT.
Bingo.
So did he wear a longer skirt than his gladiator skirt?
No.
Okay.
He did not.
I'm with Jared on Scarlett. Definitely was part of his. What did he do for his entrance? Fog and.
So the fog happened. He was standing at the entrance, just kind of doing this with a spotlight on him. And once the singing kind of started, he just walked to the ring.
Singing.
There's singing in his theme music.
It wasn't Fall and Pray.
Yeah, so it was. Yeah, once that started, he just kind of walked to the ring. And then when he got in the ring, he did his thing that he did in NXT, but it wasn't timed up like it was, as polished as it was in NXT.
After Hardy rolled him up, what was Karrion's reaction? What'd they go?
Oh, he was furious. They actually had him cut a promo at the end of the match saying Hardy made a big mistake, and basically just that, it was a fluke. And then they played his music and they went to commercial.
I wouldn't have written it that way at all.
No. Again, I'm okay with him losing if it somehow furthers his story.
You can't, because he was handling himself. Either you or Jerry, both of you probably. He was handling himself fine on NXT. You can't just main roster now. Jeff Hardy, who's been around forever, just suddenly gets one over.
What I'm saying though is if Samoa Joe would have somehow made an appearance and cost him the match,
so
that's what I would have been okay with.
And it wasn't a slip on the 10 punches; it was just a power bomb out of it.
Yep,
I don't like that at all.
Powerbomb feet on the rope.
Even from a wrestling perspective, I don't like it. No. But either way, it's not the first time. It won't be the last time that what we like is not what Vince likes, and that's what happens.
Right. So, all right. Quickly, before we move on to kind of an overarching perspective of the pandemic era, Nikki, almost superhero, aka Nikki Cross, cashed in her Money in the Bank briefcase at the end of Monday Night Raw, defeating Charlotte Flair to win the Raw Women's Championship. Jared, quick thoughts on that decision, because on the recap edition of this show last Sunday, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I said she was going to cash in and lose, and here we are 24 hours later. Quick thoughts on that.
I mean, I thought that the whole reason why I thought Charlotte probably won the title was so that we could bring back Becky Lynch and have that kerfuffle. See how I worked that in there? But
good job.
All these title reigns, they don't mean anything. Charlotte's so young in her career, and she's already had so many. And, I mean, yes, her dad had a ton, but he was working territories. He was working WCW, NWA, WWF, and he built these up. And it's like Charlotte, they're just like, oh, well, her dad had a bunch, so let's just hand them out, and then we'll let her get beat. Not that Nikki Ash or whatever doesn't deserve it. I mean, I think she's great. I still think her gimmick sucks. This whole, I'm cutesy, I'm this, I'm that. I mean, she's a good-looking woman. She's a good wrestler. I don't know why they insist on making some of these women appear this way and not take them seriously. But it just doesn't make. It's another thing that doesn't make sense.
I haven't caught your episodes enough to catch your full Nikki Ash. To me, she just feels like a female hurricane. So
that's exactly what it is. Because
have you guys touched on that before? Or no,
not really. But from what I read, from what it seems like that she's put out on social media, this is her creation. This is the gimmick she wanted to do. So here it is. It's getting over with the fans. She's now women's champion.
No,
Jared, to your point, Jared, I will say this. You give Charlotte short reins so she can catch Rick. That's happening 100%. So I do think, though, that we're getting back to Becky. So I think Charlotte does beat Nikki on the way to SummerSlam.
Bo's dying to say something. I
know.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Bo.
Nikki didn't invent anything. It's Hurricane. It literally is Hurricane. It's just a female Hurricane.
I'm not saying I'm not saying she invented it. What I'm saying is it was her idea brought to the table that she wanted to do this kind of gimmick.
Yeah, it's a way more. Compare that obnoxious whatever she was with it with Alexa?
Alexa, yep.
Yeah, so I didn't really care for that. That was a little over the top. But now her over the top makes sense, especially if for me, it gives me nostalgia vibes of I'm literally watching Hurricane again.
Yeah,
which is great as a fan. So the placement of giving her Money in the Bank, I'm not certain I've ever seen somebody cash in Money in the Bank and not win. And if they do that, they usually lose it right away on some other stipulation. I'm not sure have we ever seen a Money in the Bank cash in lose?
Oh yeah. Damian Sandow.
Yeah.
Baron Corbin.
Corbin did?
Corbin did, yep.
Okay.
Let me see. There's a couple others because the percentage is like 83%.
Okay. I thought Cena did.
No Cena won. The one time he was Money in the Bank, he won.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he did.
How far along is Becky's pregnancy? They had the kid?
Oh, Becky's already had the kid. She's supposedly ready to go.
Because on Sunday, the crowd was calling for her.
Yeah. So rumor is
great. I love the crowd.
That's a perfect transition. Let's get into it. I want to take a little bit. I know we're running long on time. Thank you for hanging with us. I want to look back on this pandemic era of professional wrestling. You know, we've been since March of 2020 until now. We just want to kind of look back at what was good, what was bad, what was memorable, what was forgettable, those kind of things. So, Bo, you mentioned the crowd. Obviously, the three of us can agree that the crowd is a huge part of wrestling. Not having a crowd, I mean, I can't say enough that the crowd is instrumental in what wrestlers do. And I think, Bo, you can attest to that as well. That the crowd, a lot of wrestlers say that the crowd makes taking bumps easier. A lot of people say that the crowd, if you don't have the interaction, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So speak to that, Bo, real quick, and your experience being the wrestler on the podcast about crowds and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I got to handle it because it is a condition that we had to learn to deal with. So handle it is correct. And then we also had to adapt to both sides. I faced it myself. It feels very much without the crowd like a practice match at practice, where all you have is a few coworkers yelling random stuff to give you some semblance of life.
Right.
So bumping 110% is easier with the crowd. It's also a little bit easier in the realm of willingness to do stuff. What comes to mind with that is the ladder match. I think one of the Usos was involved with no crowd.
Yeah.
Whatever that match was, what those three, I think it was three guys.
It was WrestleMania, John Morrison, Jimmy Uso, and Kofi. Kofi or Big E?
Oh, it was Kofi? Yeah.
It was either Kofi or Big E, one of the two. I think it was
either
Kofi.
way, for them to do what they did with no crowd, no feedback with ladders, that was a hard ask. So that was good. I had the privilege of being in tapings with no crowd, and it was awkward because one of our guys went to silence the crowd. So that made it even worse. And then Carlito Colon saw him do that. So in a later match, he did that and mocked it.
Oh, gosh.
Which was brilliant. So there were things you had to adapt to. And then at tapings with limited crowd was also a different experience because then you had a not normal reaction. So say, for instance, you have like 15 people that don't like you in a room and you have 35 that do like you. and without measurable volume at that ratio, you don't know if you're a face or a heel, and you don't really know what's going on. You can hear every last heckle. So
Right.
it's Jared, shut up. It's not kerfuffle time. To which, when a full crowd, which we've had more of at CCW at the brewery, it's been driving me nuts because I got injured prior to the big crowd.
Right.
And I've just been chomping at the bit to get back in front of that type of reaction to where, you get the holy chants and
Sure.
it just much of what we saw Sunday night is just, you can't replace it. You could tell Drew McIntyre lives off of it. And it'll make everything better. And I think it will also help storylines because now it's going to be organic and not, oh, what Vince wants, or, oh, hey, let's try this. Because when you want to try something, you have no idea what is actually happening because TV ratings and that's it. Like, for instance, Sunday night, I was very much into Money in the Bank, but I fell asleep. So the TV rating, if there wasn't a crowd from my living room, would be 0 because I fell asleep and the TV was off.
Right.
Even though I was interested and wanted to see it. So when you have the live audience there, it's going to be it should be great. And to have, I think for all of us, you don't know what you have until it's gone.
Yep.
And so I think that perspective as a worker, a lot of us, the opportunities I was given in a very limited environment versus some other guys, you talk to them, there's nothing running in their states. They can't get on at certain places because they're too busy, or their state, like California, just isn't open. Things like that. It makes us look at everything a little bit different.
Right.
And so, I'm coming back soon, and I'm excited to be in front of a big crowd because the whole reason I came back from 16 years is a part of that makes me feel alive.
Sure.
Much like we talked about earlier. There's that element. We do a lot of normal life stuff. Chris, you and I text throughout the day sometimes, and there's like, okay, Belcher texts me, fantastic. There's nothing like, I enjoy our conversations. I enjoy you as a friend, but there's no like explosion of feeling other than, what smart ass comment can I write him back?
Right.
And
right.
Then, hey, Mr. Belcher, your dad. Hopefully, he'll be like, oh, get Bo off of here. No, those type of reactions are just not big. It's like personal one-offs and things like that. So to get a big crowd reaction, like I had the privilege to actually do stand-up comedy this last weekend in front of about 50 people, and just to design a joke and have the punchline hit and to get a couple of smirks and a couple of chuckles, that's great. Now magnify that, it's fantastic.
Absolutely. So that being said, Jared, Bo just brilliantly explained the importance of a crowd at a show, and WWE attempted to replicate that by creating the Thunderdome. Now, all of us got tired of the Thunderdome towards the end. Let's be honest.
I actually didn't. I didn't really catch that. I didn't understand why. Like, even Drew McIntyre said that in a promo.
I think it's just that it got old and it didn't change.
So if feedback is authentic, I'm good. Now, if they pipe stuff in, that's where I have a problem.
Right. So that being said, Jared, the Thunderdome was a nice change from the Performance Center, obviously. It made WWE feel big again. Now, AEW has had crowds throughout the pandemic, very limited, but they've had pockets of crowds, which obviously made a difference. WWE opted not to have crowds up until this past weekend, not talking WrestleMania. What were your thoughts, Jared, just kind of on the way that WWE, I don't want to say fabricated a crowd because it was real people on the Thunderdome, but just on that whole situation and trying to replicate that atmosphere?
I mean, I think they did excellent as far as it was very creative.
Sure.
Was, I mean, they've always been trailblazers, whether we want to admit it or not, with all their faults. And they were a trailblazer. I mean, who would have really thought of doing that and making it look as good as what they did? But I want to make two quick points that I think are two big things that came from this whole COVID era, I guess is what we'll look back and call it. One is that they got used to being able to pipe in crowd noise. And according to Sam Roberts, they're still doing so and will most likely continue to do so because now they have got used to being able to change the narrative and make the crowd's response whatever Vince wants it to be. And the other thing is during this whole COVID era, came along the Peacock, and they got this whole deal. And now, if Vince didn't care before whether or not that fans were buying what he was selling, he sure doesn't care now because he has this huge, all this money on the table guarantee, and people are still going to buy the merch and all that stuff. I think he could make a ton more money if he would listen to the actual crowd. But it's just like during this whole COVID era, I think he has more reason than ever to not give not one crap about what any of us think at the end of the day. And I think that sucks.
It does suck. You know, you're exactly right. And WWE is used to piping in crowd noise. They did it before COVID. They did it during COVID, and they're going to continue to do it. That's just a WWE thing. But that being said, there were a lot of things that were crappy about the pandemic era. Obviously, no fans being the biggest thing. But Jared, if you have to look back on the pandemic era, what were some good things? Maybe if you can think of one good thing that really came out of it that we are now able to say, we can look back on the pandemic era and be like, yes, that was awesome. And it happened in a situation that would not have existed had we not had a global pandemic.
Money in the Bank. That was excellent. I mean, I'm not saying I ever want to see it again.
Right.
But the way that they did the whole going through Titan Tower or whatever it is now, and you had them on top of the building, I thought that was cool. I mean, I will always remember that. It's something that you look back at, kind of like Wembley Stadium. Whenever you look back, we had a stadium SummerSlam, and that's the only one that ever happened. I think this will be the only Money in the Bank to where you have people literally climbing up a building to the top and having a wrestling ring perched up on top of this building. So that was pretty cool.
Bo, it doesn't have to be WWE, it can be AEW, can be, whatever. To you, when you look back on the pandemic era of wrestling, what stands out that will define it for you?
That's for me, both in the ring, knowing and appreciating what a crowd feels like as a worker. That's a fantastic reminder. You get that a little bit on the indies when you go to a house and the promoter didn't do enough to fill the seats. But it is night and day between a full crowd and not. But just sitting on the couch watching AEW or WWE, and to be able to literally feel the electric of live crowds. I'll 10 years from now, hopefully we never face another bubble, pandemic, etc. Sure. But it's just like, it reminded me of like the 90s when like hot crowds, Philly, Chicago, just watching Raw. If it went to a different town that was quiet, it felt like garbage, even though it was a full house. But if you go to like Chicago, Philly, even Atlanta, like the hot crowd just heightens it so much, and like
sure,
literally you can get goosebumps. And then like the organic chants that arise, not so much like the ones that we all know now, but like just the random ones every once in a while, that you just can't replace that. So definitely the return of the crowd as a moment, whether it's each specific thing, that for me is the best take home from it.
I've got two briefly. One being that a negative, the awkward silence of WrestleMania. To me, that will always stick out in my mind as defining the pandemic era, because We were 3 weeks away from the biggest show of the year with some of the biggest matches that you would ever see. 3 weeks later, you put it in the Performance Center with 0 people.
And we were going.
And we were going, yeah, with 0 people. Zilch, nada. No noise, no nothing. To me, like that awkward silence that defines the pandemic era. But from that same event, a positive being if the pandemic era doesn't happen, we do not get the Boneyard match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. And that match sticks out to me as one of the top moments of the pandemic era, not just because it was Taker's quote unquote last match, but just how good it was and how well executed it was. And if you watch the Last Ride documentary with The Undertaker, what he had to go through to make that match happen, personally and professionally, kudos to that guy. Kudos to that match for happening. One more thing about the pandemic era before we kind of wrap up this show. Jared, I'm going to take your bullet away from you. You can't say Roman Reigns is the answer to this question.
Okay.
When you look at the list of all the wrestlers, Bo Tayvian included, that have wrestled during the pandemic era, who stands out to you? Give me a couple people that stood out to you as, I don't want to say overachievers, but really went above and beyond to really establish themselves and make a name for themselves in the pandemic era.
Well, Bo, of course.
Of course, Bo.
Let's see. And by the way, I have like a part like Bo Hawk going on here that nobody's mentioned through this whole daggone thing.
Nope.
Drew McIntyre, I think, excelled during the COVID era. But the bad thing is now is that it's like now that he's back in front of a crowd, since we didn't get him during when he basically had the rocket strapped to him, now it's kind of like I don't know if he doesn't know what to do. That's what it seems like.
Sure.
I know that Bo would probably say, not just putting words in his mouth, but a lot of it has to do with what the booker or whoever will allow you to do, but it gives the appearance that Drew does not know what to do now, or that the crowd does not accept him, or that maybe just his fire's run out. But yeah, Drew's the only one I can really think of that it seems like he excelled during the COVID era, and now that it's over, it's like, what is he? I don't know.
Bo, what are your thoughts? Who do you got there?
I just want to talk to Kevin Steen's opinion over there.
I like KO.
Honestly, my take on Drew McIntyre was his comeback and the shine and the push all coincided in such a manner to where his character development got more real. And I think it just ran its course of the comeback story of, I was the man, now I'm not. I had to work my way back. And once the feel goods on that end, what are you now? You're just a guy dropping claymores. Yeah. To where I don't think it's the rocket on the back. I think he's still one of the best workers that they have. Outside of rumors are that Strowman and McIntyre are the two highest paid. So I expect him to always be in the mix, and I'm not. I think his promo work got real, and I think after it got real and that story is told, I don't know where the character in the kilt and the tough, strong guy who came back, I don't know where that can go. Right. And that's why Jericho over 30 years redesigns himself again and again and again. Now he's back in black, things like that. As for me as to which worker stood out the most, I don't know, man. It's I think in a lot of ways, I think every guy handled what they could with what they had, and without rockets on your back. All right. Well, for me, just as a personal, Cesaro, I love him. To where he finally got his, and then
sure.
Carrying Cross with his shoulder injury right as he was the rockets on his back. So I'm gonna have to watch the Raw. I'm pretty disturbed with what they did to him, if that's, Hardy and him.
Yep.
Especially like there could have been way more playing with his comeback at NXT, continuing to develop him as a very strong person on NXT before he got called up. Especially if you're just gonna throw him under Hardy,
right.
Unless there's something bigger coming out of that. But I'm shocked at Hardy being his first person. I think in a lot of ways the roster. I think I saw some debates as to who should face who and which legends come. Like, why are the legends coming back and things like that? When is the draft?
They haven't announced it yet.
Is that different because of all of this?
I don't know. Honestly, you're right, Jared. They had something scheduled and then they changed it. I didn't read the specific dates. All I know
was when it was supposed to be, and now they're saying beginning of October.
Okay.
So yeah, they're going to get the legends out of the way, and then we're going to see the shuffle that I think they were smart to devise or design the draft for, and it's to prevent stale, and it's to create brand versus brand occasionally. So it's the rise during pandemic. Let's just give it to AEW. They showed up.
Right.
They did.
They're staying relevant, and hopefully. I'm going to put it in the universe. Hopefully I can be a part of that soon.
There you go. Absolutely.
I have one more thing that I just thought of since Bo was talking about AEW and how well they did. I love the addition of the cage that they put on top of like the railing or whatever you want to call it now on NXT. I actually hope that they leave that. I think that's a cool
They have.
Look.
I'm
talking permanently.
Yeah. It seems like they are because they've had that design for, quite a while now.
I think
started during COVID though.
Well, I think it steals a little bit from UFC and it steals a little bit from hockey and just makes you feel like it's more of a spectacle in the arena. It makes a more arena feel to where if NXT was to go to a big stadium, I think I'd like to still see that confined area, only because it's a character, right? So it develops one more sense of there's nowhere to go. Yep. Just like opposite of that, if the guys go up into the crowd, now it's like, man, it's not sanctioned anymore. It's wild. Like they're letting it all hang out. So you get those two different type of vibes. For NXT, I like it.
I think it also speaks to the fact that it seems like it's more of us against the world. If you kind of create that atmosphere in the building, you feel a part of something. So anything outside of that, you feel like, outsiders coming in or, that kind of thing.
There was a buddy of mine, and I actually trained him to do CAT scan. And he was one of the first ones that I actually basically molded him because they just stuck him with me. And I had to train this guy. And he was a young dude, fresh out of college. I just got my first house. And we were talking one day, and this is just kind of to relate wrestling to real life. And he was talking, and he's like, oh, man, I can't wait to get my first house and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I can tell you this. Whenever that you get your house, the main thing that you want to do, if you want to get girls over, if you want your buddies to come over, if you want to stick out as people saying, hey, let's go to this guy's house and do something, is you have to have something about your house that sticks out that's different than everybody else's. At the time, it was like, something as small as like a curved flat screen TV. And that's what NXT has done with this cage is that it's like, oh, well, that's what sets them apart. That's what's different. And it's cool. And that's something that can make you think, oh, man, I'd kind of like to experience that. I'd like to see a wrestler get thrown into, the barricade, but there's actually a cage there. And, it's something very small. May seem stupid, but it makes them stick out.
It's the same with TNA Impact when they had the heel and face tunnels, and now AEW heel and face tunnels.
Right.
Same type of, something slightly different.
Yep. I'll continue with the NXT theme with my superstars that stood out. I've got two. The first one that I'll mention is Finn Balor. I think Finn Balor was able to go to NXT and reinvigorate his career from where he was becoming honestly stale in WWE, he was able to go back to NXT and become a big deal again, be NXT champion for a while, have some really, really, really good matches, and now is back on the main roster. Whether that's a good or bad decision, it's yet to be determined. But I think Finn Balor really took the pandemic era by the horns and made NXT his own and really reinvented himself. The other person that I'll give it to, we talked about AEW. I'm going to go chalk on this answer. This may seem simple or like a softball. I'm going to say Chris Jericho. I think that guy, especially the beginning of the pandemic era where he had to do all that commentary, the guy is an absolute natural on commentary. He takes good matches to great and great matches to fantastic. So that doesn't even include the stuff that he did in the ring. He was AEW champion for the majority. I'm sorry, that was before the pandemic. But anyway, he was in the main event picture for a very long time. The Inner Circle has been around since day one of AEW, and it is still as relevant as it was day one. And that's all thanks to Chris Jericho. We talked about AEW surviving the pandemic. I don't think they do it without Jericho. That's just where I'm at.
Jericho excels at everything, and I can't wait to see him at the Fozzy concert that we're going to, Chris, and actually get a chance to hang out and talk to him again. I mean, he's an awesome dude.
September 30th, the Basement East in Nashville, Tennessee. We will meet him, and we will be there. It's going to be a blast. All right, we're going to wrap this podcast up. I know we've gone long. We apologize, but we cannot wrap up the show without handing out high spots and turd sandwiches, the highs and the lows of everything that has happened in the wrestling world this week. I will go ahead and go first with my turd sandwich. We talked about it just a little bit ago. Mine is Nikki Ash winning the Raw Women's Championship. Not that I don't think she should have won it, but the way that they went about it, and now the corner that they've booked themselves in with Charlotte, with Becky, with Rhea, all of that, because what scares me is I don't think Nikki is the person to carry the championship into SummerSlam, into a stadium show. That just doesn't add up for me. So nothing against her. I just don't like the booking. Bo and his cat. I was going to say Bo and his cat. I'll throw to you next. Turd sandwich from this week in wrestling.
Besides Kylie bombing our podcast.
Come on. Kylie making a run in.
It's Peacock, actually, because searchability and not being able to run it back where I want to. And then, wait, are we doing the Shine Trophy too, or that's next?
Go ahead and give it. That's fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the 6-person, 8-person ladder match for the dudes.
Yeah.
I didn't like how it began. I don't know. It just felt weird. Things didn't flow. And man, at the end of it was awesome. Yeah,
it definitely turned around. It started out a little bit slow.
Did it feel weird to you guys? Like, and I understand the slow build. I get that, but I just it was not holding my attention, which is weird for me. Like if a match doesn't hold my attention, because I'm that weirdo that I try to watch what I can and pick and choose and learn something. So to not hold my attention, something just felt weird. And then, man, the falsies, and I didn't know where they were going with it or anything. And I think Ricochet's thing really brought it back to life.
It did. Yeah, it did. You always leave it to Ricochet in a ladder match to bring things to life.
But Ricochet, AJ, and Gargano, to me, are 3 guys that can keep things alive and should be put in those glue guy positions, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Just put them with other guys and make things better.
I think to your point, I think the match went from 0 to 100, and there was no 50, 60, 70 to get there. It was just 0 to 100.
Okay, so I wasn't off on how I felt.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
It was amazing at the end. Love it.
All right, Jared, go ahead with your turd sandwich and your high spot if you've got it. Go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and say the golden turd. The golden turd I will present to Mr. John Cena. I'm so glad to see him back. He's slimmed down, man. He's Hollywood John Cena. It looked like he kind of trimmed up his hair a little bit to where he still looks like wrestler John Cena, as Sam Roberts would say, with his hat on. But you can tell he's Hollywood. Now, the actual turd sandwich, I'm giving to that crowd, man. I love having the crowd back, but you had that crowd sitting there chanting, "What?" to everything that John Cena said. So to me, that whole crowd can put themselves in a box, label it, and FedEx themselves straight to hell, because that pissed me off, man, whenever he's trying to come out there and do this first live promo back and here they're saying what over and over. Man, that irritated me.
Crowds can go one way or the other. That's very true. They have a mind of their own. If I'm handing out a high spot this week, I'm going to shout out to our newest co-host on the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, Mr. Andy York, because last week on the podcast, he said that he felt like the Raw after Money in the Bank would be like a Raw after WrestleMania. And that statement couldn't be more true. I am going to give my high spot to Monday Night Raw as a whole, because if you're throwing stuff out like Goldberg, John Cena, Karrion Kross, Keith Lee, a Money in the Bank cash-in, all on one show, sign me up, because I think the combination of that and the live crowd, I just think it sets the stage for the next phase of WWE, whatever that might look like, and I'm excited for it.
I mean, to a small level, that could have been there's show number 2 in front of a live crowd. That could have been anything, and they're going to throw the basket at it, you know? So,
right. That's true. That's true. But I think from Monday Night Raws that we have seen for a long time, I think that one was a home run.
Yeah.
when everybody's bunting, it's very easy to look like a home run king.
Hey, tomato.
That's
you can call
all of the Raws for a while, honestly.
Well, that's true, which is primarily why I'm giving this one my high spot, because of all the crap that they have thrown at us. We finally get something good. Maybe it's the crowd, maybe it's not, but I feel like we might be turning a page. So that's right.
I definitely think a lot of the good stuff business-wise was saved. So I think
Sure.
we're in for a nice rise, a skyrocket. Much like what was it when Orton and Edge had that whatever greatest match?
Yeah, Backlash. Yeah.
So a lot of stuff is just experimental, and I think we're in for some good times for the next couple of months.
I completely agree. All right, before we sign off, I want to make sure to let everybody know about our July t-shirt giveaway. If you're reading the ticker on the bottom, you know how to enter, but I'm going to go through it for our listeners who are listening to audio only, especially on Sportinarium Radio. We want you guys to contribute as well. Here's what you do. Head on over to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com. Search the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. You'll see our logo there. Hit that subscribe button. That's step number 1. Step number 2. You want to take a screenshot of proof of your subscription. All you got to do is subscribe, take a screenshot of it, and number 3, share that screenshot on the social media platform of your choice. Tag the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Do those 3 things, you are entered to win a free t-shirt at the end of July. If you have already subscribed to our show, just share the link to your favorite episode on social media, tag us, and you're entered as well. We don't want to leave you out. So, very easy way to enter our social media contest. Spread the word about the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We want wrestling fans to be able to hang out with us, enjoy what we're doing. Leave us some feedback, some comments on social media at PBW Podcast on all the platforms, and we're happy to read those on the air. We interact online as well. So it's all about fan engagement. This is a platform for the fans, by the fans. And at the end of the day, even though Bo Tayvian is a professional wrestler, Bo Tayvian is a fan just like the rest of us, and that's what this platform is here for. So again, make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review on YouTube, on Twitch, wherever you find your podcast. We appreciate it very much. Jared, Bo, anything you boys want to add before we sign off for this episode?
I just want to say that, I think Bo's right. I think that we are headed back to a good time with WWE. And to all those long-time listeners, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in. I'm just going to go ahead and get myself ready.
Oh, no.
So I just want to say that we're headed for a good time. It's going to be straight to the top, just like Andre doing something that rhymes with pumpkin. Bo doesn't know what's going on. Chris does. I'll tell you about it off the air, Bo.
I thought we were going for a Cameron Grimes situation.
Cameron Grimes. All right, Bo.
Kevin
Bo,
Owens
man.
taking his stunt double off the payroll.
That sounds like a good idea.
Wrong.
Hey, Bo, thanks for hopping on, man. Thanks for taking
Thank you,
time out of
guys.
your day to catch up with us.
Thank
You can
Bo.
follow Bo at Bo Tayvian on Twitter, at Bo_Tayvian_3.0 on Instagram. Make sure you catch him in his comeback. Bo, when you coming back? When you getting in the ring?
There's some stuff that might happen early. No official announcement as to the actual storyline or anything like that coming up, but it's going to be sooner rather than later, and
Good.
I can't wait.
We don't want you to totally spoil it because obviously we want it to be a surprise.
I can't spoil it if I don't know.
And that's true. There you go. All right. As we get ready to sign off here, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news from AEW Fyter Fest Part 2. Lance Archer has defeated Jon Moxley to become the new IWGP United States Champion, ending Jon Moxley's 500-plus day reign.
Wow.
That's fun booking for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for Bo Tayvian, Jared Justice, my name's Chris Belcher. Thank you so much for checking us out here on the Powerbomb Wrestling Podcast. We will catch you guys down the road.